I'm happy to start and welcome, and thanks for getting up at kind of 10 a.m. to come and watch this panel. But hopefully we do want to make it participatory and a bit engaging. Whether that will happen in Vienna at 10 a.m. in the morning, I'm not sure. But we have lots of questions for each other, but we really want to direct this at you guys. So the format is, we'll start off with just some small introductions to us, the funds that we work for, and just kind of maybe a couple of minutes on what we actually look for. And then I'd love to hand it over to you guys to go and get some questions. So start thinking of the first couple. If not, I'm going to take over and we'll ask each other some questions. So, but just first, a quick read of people in the room. Hands up if you're a founder in the room. Okay, now keep your hands up if you're raising investment at the moment. Okay, all the founders should just keep their hands up, because as a founder, you are always raising money. Okay, hands up if you're an investor in the room. Okay, so we have a few. So founders, check out who those people were. Maybe we can get you guys to introduce yourselves later. And then hands up if you're something else. None of those categories. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, you're supposed to be in G2. No. Okay, so let's kick off just with Leen and Andrey, if you can explain kind of the fund that you're from, a bit about your background, and then kind of what you're looking to invest in currently.
So I will start. My name is Leen. I'm a co-founder of Women in Immersive Tech. It's an NGO I started in 2016. At the same moment, actually, I started my own VR company, LucidWeb. I ended the company in 2021, and my ambition was always to become a VC. So for the last 2 years, I've been following courses and working with VCs in the space, also with Dave on a program called Diversity, but also, for example, with the VR fund in Silicon Valley, and then a local one in Belgium. So yesterday, I announced that I'm the new managing director of a fund called Force VC. Force VC has been active since last year. It's a fund originally set up for the gaming industry in Belgium, but since then the scope has increased to not only include gaming studios, but also game tech, which also includes metaverse. It's B2C and B2B. It's 18 million, and we focus not only on Belgium, but also on France, Germany, and the Netherlands. We have done 2 investments to date. One is a VR gaming production studio called Cyborn. They have released one game called Hubris, which won a lot of prizes in terms of visuals. And then recently, a Dutch company called DeLorean that have developed a web browser horse reality management game, so completely different. So the scope is to do 3 or 4 investments every year, tickets between 250 going up to 2 million in total, including follow-ups.
Thank you, Leen. Andrey?
So I'm Andrey Lunev, partner at Startup Wise Guys. Startup Wise Guys is one of the leading accelerators in Europe, focusing on B2B startups, on startups that deliver B2B products. We are on the market 11 years, and accumulated portfolio of 400 companies, out of which 27 belongs to XR, and 9 is like kind of legacy investments that we've done since inception of the accelerator, and 18 deals I've done in the last 18 months. So basically, we did 10 startups last year, 8 startups this year, and very much looking forward to 2024, where we're going to run, the full-time accelerator, but also, I'll get to that maybe later, expand our focus in more early stage, like teams without revenue and individual solo founders that are looking for the teams in extended reality. Well, I think one thing to add that we invest 100,000 at the beginning of the program, and the program will last 3 months, roughly, give it a take. I think that's about it. No, one. We do have like a big investment in this industry, so we were one of the first investors in Ready Player Me back in 2016, and really proud that it's the most successful company in our portfolio so far. And I think we share interest here with some other people in the room.
Awesome, thanks, Andrey. So I'm Dave Haynes. I'm a partner at FOV Ventures. FOV Ventures is a fund that invests in founders building the metaverse. Maybe we can define what metaverse is later in 2023. We invest up to $500,000 in startups, predominantly based in Europe, that are at the pre-seed to seed stage. We've been investing out of the fund for around 18 months and have been pretty active. We've done 18 investments. Over the last 8 months, we'll probably invest around 12 to 15 in the coming 18 months as well. So excited to hear what you guys are all working on. In the portfolio, we have a real mix. Actually, if we, out of those 18 companies, I'd only define maybe 3 or 4 as kind of pure AR and VR, but we're certainly looking to kind of add specifically in AR and VR, both in gaming, consumer, enterprise, but also we really love the kind of picks and shovels, the kind of infrastructure and kind of tooling that a lot of the developers here will hopefully be using in the future. Before FOV Ventures, I was at HTC Vive, where we were kind of very actively investing in the ecosystem through a fund called ViveX. Before that, I was at Camp, so actually made my first investment in VR all the way back in 2016. So yeah, keen to explore in the panel how things have changed maybe from back in 2016. But cool, right, hopefully you guys have been thinking of some questions, so I'm just gonna open it up to the floor. Do we have somebody who wants to open with the first question? All right, Krazi in the first row.
Hey everyone, great panel. Thanks for being here. I'm Kras Nikolov, I'm co-founder CEO of QuarkXR. My question is, so we think the metaverse hype has died down a little bit. How hard it is right now to raise funds? Because obviously that means how much money can we raise as startups. Do you think that the traction that XR, tangible traction that XR has already today is good enough?
Anyone want to take that?
How hard is it to raise funds for us or for startups? Because we also raise them.
First, for you means how easy it is for us. If there are a bunch of XR funds, it's easier for me to raise for my startup.
Want to take it?
Yeah, I think. I mean, you could answer that a few ways. There's a question which is how hard is it to raise for any startup in 2023, and maybe we can tackle that one separately because the macro climate is very difficult, and that's not just for the startups, but it's also for the funds that are trying to raise their funds, and that has a knock-on effect as well. If you're talking specifically about Metaverse and XR, I mean, I would say one thing. The pitches that we get from founders, I've definitely noticed a trend of them not, in 2021, 2022, you had the slide, which is like market slide, metaverse is going to be 800 billion or 3 trillion or, pick your number from, big report. I think in 2023 those slides are not helpful. You really have to talk about the industry that you're working in, the problem that you're solving, like, being a metaverse startup isn't really it's meaningful for us because that's the area that we're looking at, but it's, in terms of finding investment, I don't think, you should be talking about the problem you solve, the immediate market you're addressing. So I think if you then come to saying, well, you're an XR company, it's really surprising to me still that I think XR is somehow a non-consensus topic amongst most investors. And even so more here in Europe. And, for us, I think that's one of the roles hopefully FOV plays is that we do actively look at this, whereas a lot of other funds are more generalist or looking at other areas. And it seems very counterintuitive because I think the XR industry in 2023 is maybe stronger than it's ever been. On consumer, you actually have, a huge install base. You have, what was it, like $2 billion being spent in the Quest store. You have, rumors of other headsets coming out. You have PlayStation who have doubled down in the market. So yeah, and then in enterprise, I think we've seen that, like people like you guys have actually proved out that there's demand from big enterprises. So I would say the fundamentals are there, but I think if you're raising, it's still very difficult because you have to just convince investors that they want to look at the topic full stop. But yeah, I'd love to hear some views on that.
At Force, of course, I only started, but if they're looking at VR games specifically, so of course that's a niche within VR. It's not a niche, it's the biggest market, but yeah, if we just focus on that, then we just want to hear from the developers of those games. They want to be the category leader. that they really have a unique positioning, so they capture the whole market, which is, in comparison with other stores, there are only 500 apps in the MetaQuest store. If you want to be the category leader as a VC, it makes sense. The revenues are there. It's important enough for the VC to invest today. So I just wanted to bring that in. It's not all negative if you just have high ambitions, for example, for one device.
Well, on my side, I can add to that yes, indeed, venture capital, it's hard to raise right now funds, but primarily because the risk-free rate is quite high and investors playing safe at the moment. There was a lot of bubble, like the bubble of investing in startups was overinflated, I think, in 2021, 2022. But in general, fundamentals hasn't changed. You need to see the roadmap for the next 9 to 18 months and basically believe in the vision that you're building for the next, let's say, 5 to 7 years, which is our horizon of looking for exits. And then in terms of market traction, well, frankly speaking, I'm not on the B2C side. We're looking primarily in B2B startups. And if you, this is very invisible to the market. And here we have like really deep insights from the founders who build into that. And then in general, XR is hard to sell just because it's invisible technology. Again, you cannot overlook it over the shoulder and see like, oh, what is the fancy app you have here? Like maybe Apple, who demonstrates like their what's going on behind the headset, like with the eyes. That's an interesting approach, how you can show other people that you are somewhere else, not here. In terms of market numbers, I would really recommend everybody to review the yesterday combined session with BCGX and Swisscom. They brought up really good numbers. I haven't seen I haven't dived into details, but it's really something that you could use in your decks and presentation. And don't talk about metaverse market. Talk to me about event industry. Talk to me about learning and development market. Like, just forget the tech. What are the industries you're actually addressing?
Thank you very much. That's,
I just wanted to add something on the market numbers. I've literally 3 times in the last month, I've seen pitch decks where they still have the market numbers from a PwC thing in 2019. So yeah, I mean, maybe we just don't have better numbers, but I'm sure we must do. So yeah, try and update those numbers. Yeah.
I think we had another question here at the back. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, one cannot go to an investor panel this year and not ask about AI, so I'll bite. There has been a lot of, let's say, free riding, I would say, on the AI hype train. And I'm seeing both startups, but also some investor pages on LinkedIn say, we invest in metaverse, AR, XR, and also AI. And I would like to know from you, like, where do you see real substantial synergies between what's possible in AI, including generative AI, but not only, right now, and the whole metaverse field? Like, where do you see actual overlap?
Yeah, I can go first again. So actually, funnily enough, we have an entire blog post on this topic coming out later today or tomorrow, so you'll read that, although that was more specific to gaming. I think for us, I mean, it's one of those things that I think will look a bit silly in a couple of years' time to say, like, we invest in AI, because it's a bit like saying we invest in the internet or we invest in technology. I think AI has now got to the point where probably most startup, whatever you're doing, is going to use AI in some form, right? So then the question is, are you doing something specifically in that field, which is, could only be done today? An example of that for us, we have an investment in a company called Scenario that is using generative AI to create game assets. So for us, that's super interesting because one of the really tough things about XR is developing content, right? So if we now have tools that make it easier, it makes it easier for other startups to ship. So for us, we've invested in those tooling. We have a company called Scenario. There's another one that we're about to close on, which is looking more at generative audio. We looked at companies like 11 Labs who are doing like speech synthesis. And so whilst those aren't kind of metaverse or XR specific topics, they have very direct applications, right? Other areas that we've looked at is things like NPC intelligence, providing intelligence to characters. Again, that's not an XR or a metaverse topic, but if I'm, typing and I'm, playing a game and I've got a character, that's a lot less immersive. Like, I think those characters will really shine when I'm in a VR kind of adventure story and I'm up close and I'm interacting with that person. You guys, virtual beings, are doing, using AI to do kind of, like bring characters to life and add movement. So yeah, for us, there's all of those like just fundamental. What are the companies like yourself that are kind of giving the tools? And then on the flip side, we are looking at, okay, if you're a company, you probably have an AI slide, which is fine, is a bit cynical. I think a lot of people just like to have AI in their pitch decks because it's a buzzword, but there are companies, we've just invested in a company doing meditation and wellness. I probably wouldn't have invested in that company 2 years ago because that looks like a content company, whereas actually with all of these generative AI tools, none of which are proprietary to them, but all of a sudden they can turn that into a platform rather than a content business that I wouldn't invest in. So even if you're not an AI company first, I think as investors, we want to hear, where's the uplift? Like, what can you do cheaper, quicker, faster, better, because you're taking advantage of all of these different pieces of tooling?
For me, on that level, first of all, I'm not an expert, but I'm a bit more skeptical because, for example, Meta has been focusing on AI for the metaverse for a while, and they've been doing amazing work and also been very communicative about it. So if I would see a startup, I would definitely, my first question would be, is this something that Meta have been building on for a significant time? So I'm a bit more skeptical, I guess. But yeah, I think like Dave mentioned, the moment that a startup with a very specific offering, I think there's one in the pitches as well today with virtual fashion and avatar creation, where it really would help the process and the product, then I do believe that it's definitely an added value for that startup.
Well, it's an interesting question. When you think of mobile apps, would you say that you invest in databases when you think of investing in mobile apps? But essentially, it's a user interface to a certain database. Like in terms of AI, let's break it down to like, do you invest in math? Do you invest in proprietary data sets? Or do you invest in the user interface? Or do you actually invest in the customer base that needs this particular interface to this proprietary database that you own? And like, this is relatively simple to assess when you break these things down. And in general, like AI is very overhyped at the moment because the amount of data that you would need to actually come up with something novel is just inaccessible to the startups at our stage of investments. But if you think of AI if it's a smart automation of certain processes in the company or in virtual character creators, yes, we do invest.
Thank you very much for that. That's really, really useful answers. So I've seen some hands already. I just want to get a sense of how many people have a question burning within them. Can you put your hand up if you'd like to ask a question? Cool. I think that's probably going to be all that we have time for. I hope that we get through as many as we can. But I'm going to go over here next.
Thank you very much. So my name is Stefan. I'm from Germany. I'm in the B2B business. So we're creating a platform for safety VR experiences with all the different country-specific regulations which are in there. But my question is, would you invest in a decentralized platform? Because we started based on blockchain technology. Then we have, of course, a kind of a blockchain winter or a coin winter. So we turned it into a centralized platform. But my question is, would you invest in decentralized apps?
Thanks.
I can maybe start. As the fund is focused on gaming, yeah, the biggest they're open, definitely, to have a look at it, but the biggest problem is that the biggest distribution platforms like Steam and for example, Apple, they don't allow monetization via decentralization or structured, so it's just not possible via those distribution platforms. For everything but gaming, we would look at it. Then again, I'm not sure if it's the case for the other investors, but we're partially public funded, and there's still a lot of skepticism related to decentralization. So it cannot be a crypto first or blockchain first offering. It could be something that is part of the offering, but not the core offering.
Thank you.
We just opened up Web3, but I mean, I think formalized already and finished scouting. So the Web3 batch will be starting in Lisbon around the Web Summit dates. So as startup wise guys, yes, we do look into those things. If you ask myself, when I define like what do you invest in metaverse, it's like metaverse, XR, everything except crypto on my side. Why? Well, decentralized, like what is the source, what is the fundamental source of value that you create in this environment? Basically, you waive any obligations between employer and employee when it comes to decentralized network of developers that contribute into your code, and then it's a hassle to actually define who owns IP. It works in certain cases. And then the second thing is like very popular case is the customer engagement, consumer engagement, when you kind of, again, incentivize people to do something, contribute to your brand awareness through some activations and engagement tools, and basically you pay them nothing. So that's for me essential of decentralization, which basically reduces your cost of labor in the company and reduce your tax based, the base for taxation. That's it.
Yeah, so for us, there's no reason why we wouldn't invest in something that was kind of on-chain or decentralized. A couple of important caveats. We don't have a mandate to invest in tokens. So if it was, we would be investing in equity. And I think if the company was planning to launch a token, then there would also need to be kind of some understanding of kind of what that was, why it was. Obviously, regulation is coming in, which has brought some uncertainty to certain circumstances where you would or wouldn't invest. We actually had several Web3 companies in the portfolio. Some were fully on-chain. Some have or had plans to launch a token. I think it really depends what the reason why you've got it is. I think in the consumer space, it's actually been seen as a bit of a negative because there's been so much bad press over the last year. It's actually put consumers off. So then the question is, well, does this help or hinder? But yeah, if there's some kind of fundamental reason why putting elements of your business on chain makes sense, then we're certainly happy to look at it. I hesitate to say that because I think a lot of people, we say that we're a metaverse fund, and I think a lot of people have conflated Web3 and crypto with metaverse. Like for us, I think about like the area that we invest that we call metaverse and the area that is kind of crypto, which includes DeFi and lots of other stuff. There's probably a kind of 30% overlap of those two circles. I think the things that are most interesting to us are, how can the chain be used when you have like digital assets? Is that helpful in providing interoperability of assets? How do you think about virtual economies? Most of those are more consumer topics, but can lend themselves into B2B. So yeah, we certainly do look at that kind of area of overlap, but I have to say, it's also trickier in the market because I think a lot of investors have had this knee-jerk reaction to all the negative press. So whilst in 2021, if you look like a Web3 crypto company, it was almost a good thing because there was a bunch of investors who were like, oh, we need to get a piece of this. It's the opposite effect in 2023 where a lot of those people are. So you'd probably be going to the kind of the funds. There are a lot of good funds in Europe, people like Fabric Ventures who are laser focused on companies that are building on chain. So it's probably best to start with those funds first when you're fundraising.
Just to complement Dave, so in my perception, like everything that deals with decentralization in Web3 has very much B2C focused, because you're essentially dealing with individuals, and individuals require a lot of marketing efforts and also has irrational way of decision making. I prefer ROI and B2B enterprise when it's clear and could be like established and scalable process, which is really well protected from competition, because very few people know intricacies of certain value chains. And when they come up with something that is relevant to certain value chain, this is like my home run.
Thanks very much. Yeah, the subtleties of that were really, really interesting to hear about your perspectives on that. Okay, so people who had their hands up before that I asked, I'm going to come over here. Here we go.
Hi, I'd like to ask Leen that you only do 3 to 4 investments a year, so you're...
Sorry, can you repeat?
I could hear that you only do 3 to 4 investments a year, so you are a lot more selective than the gentleman. So my first question, or I don't know, that what is your criteria to qualify? My second question is, you mentioned that you're partially public funded. Are there additional strings attached? And my third question is, what's your attitude to B2B?
So yes, 3 or 4 investments per year. The criteria, depending on the industry, like I said, there's historically a strong focus on gaming, so that will continue for sure. The partner that I'm working with is Dutch-based, and he's a game expert, so there's a lot of deal flow coming from his side. The fact that it's public funded, so it's Belgian funded, the biggest reason why it's public funding from Belgium is because there's a huge game scene in Belgium. There are a couple of studios who are really popular, big, like Larian is one of them, or Triangle Factory. So there's a school in Kortrijk, and it's really also internationally renowned because of the game designers and game developers. So basically the biggest LPs wanted to make sure that the talent coming from the school stays in Belgium. So this is why it's primarily set up, but 18 million spending in one country is a bit difficult, so therefore the scope has increased to other countries. But still, we're primarily looking at Belgium. So I'm not going to say in terms of percentages. It will be part of the board of directors decision case by case. But we have an agreement that we can look out in other countries now. And in terms of for games, it's definitely very important that there's a lot of Steam lists, that there's a big community on Discord, Twitter, before we be able to actually engage with the developers. So it should be already like almost a hit online before they actually go into the release. And for B2C and for the other verticals except gaming, that would be much more my department, because I've been more active in VR and AR and also B2B with my previous company. Depending on the stage, the ticket, again, what is attraction, what is the feedback of the first client, how can we improve the product? So depending on that, as a normal VC looking into the ticket size. Does that respond to your question?
Thank you very much. And going back over this side, I'll take your question.
Hi, my name is Marta Frankel, and I'm from Germany. And going to be founder, hopefully, of a female-led XR studio. And my question is, because I was always wondering and looking a lot around, and if there is any chance for, like, if you're building a studio for long term and that's growing organically, and I want to focus on diversity and more several projects, not only one product or one big project. If there's any chance to get investment for that.
And the studio is focused on?
it's focused on educational and scientific content, and also with cultural institutions. We already have a lot of experience, and we would go on with working with them. Yes.
I think for us the biggest differentiator there would be if it's more like a service company, or more like from those services, are you building a product in parallel, or can a product be identified that is scalable? So for game studios, yeah, they need to show basically a vision of multiple games. What is their vision? What they want to achieve as a category leader? But in VR and AR services, for us, there needs to be a product as a consequence of those services that you deliver.
Yeah, I would say a similar thing. So yeah, there's certainly it depends how you define studio, but I would agree with Leen. It's like if you're a studio that is doing work for hire, or saying, hey, look, we do kind of project by project and we get paid and we're just kind of growing organically. That's can be a great business. There's no reason not to do that. But if you're looking for venture capital funding, the caveats to that will be that the investor probably wants to find a scalable business. And it is, and there are plenty of exceptions here, but I think most venture capital funds, once they reach a certain size, they're looking for exits that, they need to believe that a founder will go on and kind of exit the business within a 10-year time frame, and that it's going to be for us, we're a relatively small fund, so every investment we need conviction that it's going to be like 300 to 500 million plus business at some point. Most kind of smaller studios won't necessarily want or need to scale to that, so that's one caveat. But in terms of the sectors that you mentioned, education, I actually think XR and education, there's still a huge opportunity. One challenge there, though, with investors, there are a lot of ed tech funds. So if you're doing education, you can go and find some specialist funds. I think one challenge is always like selling into school systems. That can be kind of a tough slog. But I think especially in everyone in the room already knows that VR is such a great kind of education tool. Like we've seen language learning, you've got prisms for maths. Like I think science is great. You can actually run experiments, in virtual reality rather than in the lab. So as a fund, we're super excited by education, but it comes with caveats. In culture, I think culture is maybe slightly more difficult, but we just invested in a company called Atopia that's kind of helping museums like digitize and bring culture into virtual worlds. And there is actually a culture tech fund here in Vienna called New Renaissance Ventures. So just a shout out to them. So if you are building in the culture sector, there are some people, but it's a area where some investors will maybe have a few caveats of investing. But good luck, and we definitely need more female founders in this industry. So yeah, good luck.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thanks. And anything else on that?
Well, I can add something. I'm not a specialist in gaming per se, but in general, what I usually do in this case, if you're a studio and you're building content and you're profitable, go for it. Don't think about making a startup. Basically, some of the conversations with founders that I hold, I'm trying to convince them not to do startup, to be honest, because it's a big hustle. The main, let's say, misconception is that sometimes or often people are not capable or not able to sell product at the price point that above the cost of the production. And at that point, they're like, okay, we are not a production company. We are a startup. Bam! No, you're just making loss. You're not a startup. If you want to learn how to be a startup, we have a program which is free of equity or any contributions for pre-revenue teams or individual founders. Come up to me later. I'm happy to give you more details.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. I've got another question over here, and then I'll go over the other side.
Oh, I'm very lucky because I was about to ask a similar question, but this links to my curiosity on your opinion about the state of location-based VR entertainment or VR, location-based VR and XR experiences from a business perspective after the pandemics.
You guys go.
Yes, so I think, there's some really exciting companies in that space. If I think, the headline is, you have Sandbox that have kind of, gone through their, trials and tribulations. There's a great UK startup called Existent who are kind of providing a sort of void as a service where it's, very physical, but kind of working with other IP owners. I think there was a lot of businesses in the early 2016, which was more like VR arcades. I think that's probably more of a topic. I think it's an interesting category because where you're dependent on locations and rollout of locations, actually it's maybe not a venture investment, but it might be more. There's certain kind of, people who would invest in food and beverage or, private equity that are more kind of real estate based, right? So, but I think you can probably do a mix of the two. I think for us, if we saw something that was in LBE, I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but I would need to understand what's the growth profile of the business, what are the exit ambitions, and then how does it differ? Because there are a lot of other kind of things. But I think post-pandemic, a lot of those businesses have really bounced back, and I think there is a really vibrant scene of people want to go and have those group experiences, and so I think it's a good business, but maybe tougher. When I was at HTC, we invested in a company called Immersive that's doing kind of very large scale, get 100 people through, and we were very excited by the numbers on that business. But they were able to prove that they could get 100 people through an experience, and in location, it's all about what is your utilization of this space versus just putting in a bar or a cinema or something like that. So it's slightly different comparables. When it comes to location-based AR, we've seen a lot of location-based. There seems to have been a wave of location-based AR things in the last kind of year because the technology has fundamentally got a lot better. You now have people who were doing that 3 years ago, they had to build everything from scratch themselves. Now you can use a Niantic or a Google or, a lot of people. There's a lot of the building blocks that are needed. I think what we're lacking at the moment, other than Pokemon Go, which is arguably not AR, I think it's very difficult to, I just haven't seen any kind of game mechanics or mechanics in social location-based AR that have really been able to scale. But I'm looking for those things. So if somebody can, show me something that does have signs of working. And I think AR is just becoming more mainstream, but we've got phone-based AR is still very hard. People don't want to go out in the streets of Vienna and wave a phone around and get hit by a car as they step back to locate themselves. But I think, and we're still probably at least 4 years away from, having, kind of at least a good chunk of people wearing some sort of augmented glasses. So, yeah, I think we're waiting on that category.
With the fund I'm representing, they had ties with early investments of Liberty Global in LBE in Belgium, and those investments were not as expected. So for us, there's a bit of a skepticism today, but also, like Dave is saying, looking when something passes by is not immediately a no, but seeing how different or how unique it could be for the market, but definitely some skepticism.
Thanks very much. I've got, there's so many hands coming over here. You have caught my eye a couple of times, so I'll come to you next.
Thank you very much. Mats Troelsgaard from Synergy XR. Now that Apple is entering this market with the Vision Pro, what is your perspective on that, and how do you think that will have an impact on the investment market within XR technologies?
Yeah, great question. I'm super excited about the Vision Pro, maybe too excited because I'm worried that it's not quite going to live up to my expectation. But early reports, everyone that I know who's been to Cupertino and tried their headset independently has said that it's very good. So I'm hopeful. I think it will make a real change. There's definitely been an uptick of interest in other investors asking me about the category because they've seen Apple. And I think a lot of people have seen Apple coming into the market as validation that this is a category and it's not going to go away at all. And I think for a few reasons, I think it is going to, once we actually have it in our hands and once we try it, I think it will pull a lot more investors in. I still speak to a lot of investors who haven't really tried VR, or they tried it back in the day and they were on some roller coaster that made them sick. And they might say that they've tried it, but they don't spend time in a headset. I think the other thing is a lot of investors, I kind of fortunately or unfortunately, I'm old enough to kind of have 2 kids. So I've seen my kids grow up in VR headsets, and I see what they play and I see their friends playing. I don't think a lot of investors have had that kind of direct contact. Whereas what will happen when you have the Apple Pro, they will go into the Apple store on Regent Street or in New York, and they will try the headset. And I think the first impressions is going to blow them away. So I think it's just almost like a personal thing. Like they will grow belief by hopefully by putting their head in a headset. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is, although we're still cautious because I think distribution is going to be low. I mean, they're producing, what, hundreds of thousands, not millions. I think that there will be demand for those headsets, but it's just very difficult to, build. So I think any startups we're looking at, they need to have a plan for, hey, we want to target the Apple Vision Pro, but we're on other platforms or there's something else around it. We're also very open to kind of just like flat mobile apps who have a view to, hey, when the Vision Pro comes out, we can expand the functionality. But I think for me, it opens up a whole bunch of new categories. And it's the same as like when my dad kind of first started bringing his mobile phone home or his IBM home, or like there was an age where people started bringing devices home for work and then thought about how they could use it in work. And I think we're going to see the same here, where most enterprise stuff in VR at the moment is like, here's a solution, you're going to sell it, and it's top down, and we're going to buy 100 headsets and we're going to roll it out. But I think in B2B, people would just like someone like my dad would go out and he would just buy the device and be like, oh, wow, I can sit at my monitor and I can do this. Or like, oh, in my next presentation, I could do that. So I think we'll see a lot of bottoms-up adoption because of the Apple headset that we just haven't seen. No one's going to take their Meta Quest 3 to work because, it's like, oh, hang on, you're playing games or something like that. I think Apple will change that.
Well, I think they're opening up a completely new developer market and communities to this domain of XR. That's first, and that it's going to be huge. Just sheer translation of all flat apps into spatial context is already a big thing. But the second thing is XR is an ultimate aggregator of technologies, components, apps, super apps. So it's like one super device that have access actually to everything. So if you think of the friction that you have now, like saving your WhatsApp contact on Apple device, and then it just doesn't show up because there is some friction between Meta and Apple, and you cannot explain it even, but there is a friction versus like seamlessly operating across nodes, MacBook. Like I'm fascinated when I'm able just to copy paste something from the smartphone directly into my presentation, like without any middleware, clouds, anything. So, and our tolerance to friction really very low at the time. So despite like the high price, and I heard like some feedback of from developers who have tried both devices, like Quest 3 and Apple, and like they're, wow, man, Apple should be worried because Quest 3 is so amazing. I get this, but then if you think that I can read my watch and my screen without taking off my Quest 3, I literally tried it. Like you can do whatever you want without taking off your headset. But remember that whatever you do being processed by camera, and it's not anymore private to you. Like, do you want, like, where is the boundary between those two ecosystems? It's a big question where Apple probably can kind of establish themselves with the high price point. I'm not sure if I was answering the right question.
Yeah, thanks ever so much. And I'm really sorry to say that that's the last question that we could take because we have the startup pitch competition next and we have to finish this session on time so we can wrap up. So I would just like to say a really, really big thank you to our investors, to Leen Segers, Dave Haynes, and Andrey Lunev. Thank you all so much for those insights and really like the kind of on the pulse information in answer to those questions. And hopefully those of you who ask questions, those questions will be questions that other people had. And so that information will be really useful to everybody. So big round of applause for our investors. Thank you very much.